Ohio train derailment, cover up of contaminated soil raises some questions. We've got questions. We need answers. What's going on here? I've been following this story, and a lot of it just from prodding from you guys. I've been following this story, seeing all these little tangents people are going down on. Some crazy stuff, right? I mean, train derailed, had a bunch of crazy chemicals on it, dug a big trench, burned off the chemicals. Then all of a sudden, everybody's just like, it's all good. Here, drink some water. The oil coming up in the creeks and the streams nearby feeding into the Ohio River. It's okay. It's all right. It could be natural. I mean, so much of this stuff, you just really don't know what to believe, right? And you got some folks that are just pointing at all kinds of things that this is indicative of. This accident happened because of this and governmental oversight. And only the progressives are really handling this as far as the whole impact of the environment thing. Then you got people on the far right, just government at its worst. We're going to read a few articles today. We're going to read a handful of articles. We're just going to cover it. We're just going to talk about it just in a reasonable fashion. Not going down any crazy conspiracy theories, but I'm open to them. Had our water guy come in this morning. Some those big, huge containers of water. Speaking of water, here, have a glass of water. Speaking of water, and he was asking, hey, that whole James O'Keefe deal. And I was like, yeah, the founder of Project Veritas just got booted. Board just booted him. Conspiracy theories there as well. We're going to talk about that at the very tail end of today's live stream. But hey, we're doing a giveaway. So if you want to go to our Discord channel, which is Reasonable Plus, there should be a link in this chat here very soon, talking about we're doing 3 memberships to our subscriber platform. 3 memberships we're going to give away by 1 o'clock today. So this live stream will get over sometime after, I don't know, noon Seattle time. And then just become a member on our Discord channel. There's lots of cool free stuff there. And enter the giveaway. There's a giveaways section, and you can't miss it. It's pretty easy to find. All you can do is click that bad boy once, and you're entered in for a free month of subscriber on our Reasonable Plus platform. So check that out. Cool stuff. Doing giveaways, getting you guys involved, whatever. Let's talk about Ohio. First, I got to get my chair to go up. Do you sit on a chair for a while and let the pneumatics just go down and feel like you're a midget? That's not good. We can't have that. So thank you for everybody that's joining. Let's do this live stream. Ohio train derailment cover-up of contaminated soil raises questions. I've had questions about this whole thing, but a lot of it is, hey, there's so many of these conspiracy theories. Are any of them correct? The overall safety of the communities situated closest to a train derailment that occurred earlier this month has been called into question by environmental soil experts. Just reminds me of Erin Brockovich, right? Is that her name? I think it was. Remember that? Yeah, remember Pretty Woman in the environmental movie? She, had a bunch of kids, and she was a legal assistant, and she won the big case, and they won millions. And yeah, that whole thing, right? The Norfolk Southern Transport Company train derailed near the Ohio town of East Palestine, carrying about 150 cars, 20 of which contained hazardous material. The thing I was kind of shocked about is, okay, we had this wild train crash, and then, they burned up all these chemicals, and then just so quickly, it was like, it's okay. It's all right. Here, have a glass of water. It's all good. You're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. All those chemicals, don't worry about them. It's 2 thumbs up. Contaminants in the soil, you were just kind of left with, I don't know. A huge fire ensued, sparking fears that the crash could ultimately result in a massive explosion that would release noxious gases into the area. I cleaned my stove this past weekend. I know, it's the exciting weekend life of a whatever it is that I do. And talk about noxious gases. You heat up your oven, you follow the instructions, you spray that stuff in there. Good Lord, that is some nasty stuff. Probably supposed to wear a mask at all, but I hate wearing a mask. So Emergency responders were able to mitigate this possibility by intentionally breaching 5 cars to let out the chemicals inside. Yep, let her rip. We're just going to burn these off, guys. Did you see any of the pictures of the plume from the explosion that happened? I mean, it looked like a bomb had gone off, right? However, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has sent a letter to Norfolk Southern and accused the company of failing to properly dispose of the contaminated soil, according to a WKBN report. That doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all. Norfolk Southern, massive company, billions of dollars in revenue. They just did however many million or bill, I can't even remember, stock buyback. Yeah, because they're kind of doubling down on, we're doing pretty good here. We're going to make this go. According to the letter sent on February 10th, 5 rail car tankers of vinyl chloride were intentionally breached. The vinyl chloride was diverted to an excavated trench and then burned off. For those of you not following the story, and the vinyl chloride, it's used to make PVC, so plastics, and it also used to be used in, I think it was air conditioners, stuff along those lines. Areas of contaminated soil and free liquids were observed and potentially covered and or filled during the reconstruction of the light rail line, including portions of the trench burn pit that was used for the open burn off of vinyl chloride. This is some toxic stuff. This is not good. You know what I mean? Just, whole thing. Then you got people in the town. I saw an interview this morning of a guy in the town. He was a roofing contractor. And he's like, yeah, not a lot of people going to be moving to East Palestine. Not going to be a lot of business for roofers. This isn't going to be good for our, town, our community. Somebody was saying they were a hairdresser. Like, yeah, the water that we're going to use to shampoo your hair could be contaminated. All these factors. A lot of it's just the fear factor, right? And if you have other options, other cities you want to go to, other little towns that you want to go to, you're probably going to go there before you go to East Palestine, right? It's going to have an impact for a long, long time. Vinyl chloride is a colorless gas used to make polyvinyl chloride plastics, PVC plastics, and is highly flammable and decomposes to make toxic fumes. This just sounds like fun, doesn't it? Terrible. According to the National Library of Medicine, it's also carcinogenic. Oh, good boost. All right, and throw that into cigarettes, right? And can cause other health issues. But don't worry, here's a glass of water. Drink up. It's good stuff. Yeah. Dr. Julie Wetherington Rice, who has a PhD in soil science. How do you one day grow up and say, I am going to be a PhD in soil science? Don't know. Also suggested that the failure to properly dispose of contaminated soil would eventually result in further health and environmental issues. To that, I would just say, you think? I mean, it's super basic stuff, right? Did we push this train line along just to make things go? And, how many of these occurrences do we have across the United States, like on a monthly basis? You start looking at the shipping metrics of stuff that we ship on rail lines, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of toxic stuff going back and forth, because it takes a lot of toxic stuff to build all the ridiculous stuff, even just, all the plastics I've got going on here, all the whatever it is, batteries. I don't know how many batteries we got going in this bad boy, but, it's just nutty. And so you think of all that stuff, and we've got spills going all the time, but this one was just so kind of high profile. And yet there wasn't much media coverage of it, was there? It was kind of like crickets. And those are some of the storylines I was looking at. And I'm thinking, all right, what kind of cleanup are we going to have? Or what kind of massive cleanup are we going to have here? And then a few days later, it was like, no, it's okay. Soil samples came back good and water's good. So speaking to WKBN, she said, I think it was not in the best interest of human health and welfare and the environment to simply cover it up and keep going without at least preliminary evaluation to determine if the level of vinyl chloride that was present in the soil was going to create a potential contamination threat to surface or groundwater. That seems like a good idea. I am no EPA expert. I'm just not. That's not really in my wheelhouse. But when you've got a chemical spill like this, it does feel like the speed at which this one, went from, seeing the explosions and the plumes of smoke and the car, boxes on their sides and just all of this craziness going on to, "Here, have a glass of water. It's all good. Drink up." Hydration is important. During the initial response at the site involving moving equipment, etc., some soil is moved around to best complete that initial phase. Weatherington Rice noted that vinyl chloride is highly mobile in soil and can eventually leach into the groundwater following precipitation that allows it to move through the soil. Okay. She added, "It's not a question of whether it's going to be an issue. It will be an issue. The question is, how bad of an issue is it going to be? Where is it going to go? And how long is it going to take to get there? And what's going to happen when it gets there?" So many questions, so few answers, right? Yeah. So I'm going to read a few comments here and see what you guys have. So most all the topics on today's live stream are just this content. So we're going to be going back and forth, and I want to see, they use chemicals to get better food. Yep, that is true. Got to follow citizen reporters and for real stuff. There was no light shed on this till other politicos decided to take up the cause for points. Truth is harsh, but that's reality. All right. Yeah. That was kind of some of what I was thinking too, is that mum was kind of the word on this storyline. Just got another ecological disaster over here. And then, some of these folks, and Rebecca, we're going to talk about one of them, a TikTok dude. He's some kind of scientist, and he broke it down. And then all of a sudden, Joe Rogan said, "That guy, read what he said." Because, Rogan is famous for being on top of it, and his people for being on top of it enough that he's aware of who is doing stuff that may not have hit mainstream media yet. He's really good at that. And then he kind of takes it in and gives you his spin, which isn't, all the time necessarily. And he admits it, that he, blows stuff all the time, because none of us can research everything all the time. So that's why I kind of, look to you guys for information too. 9,000 plus toxic chemicals in the water and air in 9 states will be impacted. All right. Yep. That sounds awful. Railroad companies can't buy new equipment and nationalize at this point. Yeah. The whole supply chain transportation deal, right? Train wreck in Ohio, President Joe. Okay. All right. Stan, this one's for you. So I think it is East Palestine mayor talks about, it's like, "We've got an ecological disaster," the mayor of East Palestine. "And where's our president?" "Oh, he's in Ukraine giving away another 500 million, I think it was. Just, crazy stuff, right? There was a 2022 indie film called White Noise about a toxic train derailment containing the surrounding area, and it's based in Ohio. I have heard of that, never watched it. White Noise. I thought Joe deal was called Build Back Better. It is. But are we building anything back? And is it better? And how about the Inflation Reduction Act? That one too, right? So if you believe the Build Back Better. All right. Article number 2. What's causing the oil sheen in East Palestine streams? So you've seen all this video footage, and you'll see him, like some woman will just be like poking a stick in the water, and you're like, that's some nasty looking water. That looks like water in an area that has got like a harbor, got a lot of boats in it, and you've got that kind of sheen across the water. But this is in like a stream, and these are creeks that feed into the Ohio River, which provides water for, I think it's like 5 million people. So there's some concerns there. There's some legit concerns there. Oil sheens have been discovered in several creeks in and around East Palestine since the Norfolk Southern trail derailment earlier this month. First News spoke with an environmental expert who specializes in chemical spills about whether or not a natural occurrence could cause the oil sheen. Could this have just happened naturally? I mean, you got a train that literally went off the tracks, right? And just, crash and burn. And that oil sheen, it could be natural. I mean, it's just, it's just the earth bringing up some oil. Oh, right. I mean, Do they think we're just absolute morons? I think so. I think so. The rainbow sheen that you see in those news clips, that's totally typical of oil in the stream. Okay. All right. So then my question would be, where'd the oil come from? Where did the oil come? Is it just floating downstream from a big oil factory upstream? No. I mean, this is from Dr. Robert Knox, presidential professor and director of School of Civil Engineering and Environmental Science at the University of Oklahoma. Knox says there are instances where natural factors could cause sheens in the water, but he says that they look different. So we're dispelling a myth here. Knox says that okay, according to the British Columbia Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, most sheens caused by pollution are the result of petroleum products entering the environment. Petroleum lube oil was listed as an oil that was on board the derailed train, and one of the cars it was stored in lost an entire load, as well as several other cars that breached and leaked the oil. And yet we're told, that could be natural. That could be natural. Knox says the type of iridescent sheen comes in the creek lines up with a type of petroleum oil. The natural stream does not do that. And yes, I've heard about, and they say, well, it could be biological processes. No, if it can stir like they show in those videos, that's oil-filled contamination. How did they get into the stream? Knox said. And here's the part that I found really interesting here. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, a good way to tell whether a sheen is from natural bacteria or oil is to use a stick to break it apart. All right, get out a stick. Bacterial sheen and dip it in the water. And a bacterial sheen will typically break into small platelets. So it'll break up when disturbed, while a petroleum sheen will quickly reform, goes back together. That seems pretty basic, right? So we've got an oil spill. We've got oil leaching up into the water, is what we're saying in Ohio. Another way to tell them apart is by smell. Natural sheens don't smell like petroleum. All right? That seems pretty basic. That seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? And yet you've got the railroad saying, we cleaned it up. And the APA is saying, you're going to clean up everything. And here else is what you're going to do. You guys have got the money to do this. First News went out and got video of water sheens from Leslie Run, which flows into several other streams before hitting the Ohio River. West Virginia Governor Jim Justice said that chemicals from the train derailment have spilled into the Ohio River, which serves as drinking water source for more than 5 million people. There we go. All right. Okay. Officials in West Virginia have said that the water has been tested and it is safe to drink. Oh, I feel better already. Don't you? Don't you? Yeah. I still drink water out of my faucet at home. Yeah, I've got filtered water, bottled water. I don't think I have filtered water. I have my fridge. Long story on that, but ridiculous. I just drink water out of the whatever. I feel fine. I mean, I'm growing an 11th toe or 11th, whatever, but beyond that, it should be fine. However, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency's website, a harmful quantity is any quantity of discharged oil that violates state water quality standards, causes a film or sheen on the water surface, or leaves sludge or emulsion beneath the surface. So we're trying to blame this on we're trying to blame this on natural organic breakdown of material. It just creates a sheen that comes up. And no, you got water leaching into the surface, right? You got water leaching into the ground and coming up. So you're going to have some massive cleanup here. Meanwhile, you've got President Biden off in, where was he, Kiev yesterday, I think. And today he's in Poland. They cut off my news feed this morning to run his speech. I just can't listen to him. I'm sorry. I got through his State of the Union address. Man, that was painful. And I was only there just for the chuckles. I was there for the laughs. And there were quite a few. I mean, we've got at least 10 more years of reliance upon fossil fuels. I laughed pretty hard at that one. It wasn't meant to be funny. He honestly trying to tell this to us with a straight face. Just kind of like everybody involved here going, it's okay. Drink the water. It's fine. We did a test in the dirt. soil samples came up good. It's all good. All right. You guys want to break ground for a foundation anywhere around here and just put your new house in, and we'll just see how this goes. Yeah. Somebody made the comment of, do you trust the results like Pfizer Vax results? Can you trust them not to spin the results like Pfizer Vax results? Hello, it's me. I don't trust anything anybody puts in front of me. I really don't. Somebody says, go look to how those railroads round into Chicago. There's all kinds of history and stories and stuff on all of this, isn't there? Especially with the railroad. It's like, what was that? Hell on Wheels with Anson Mount. That was a great show. That was a fun show. I think it was on the History Channel or something. I can't remember. It was really good. Joseph thinks there are still lynch mobs running around. Okay. Yeah, those trains speed into Chicago. Yeah, so I don't think there's been a massive cover up per se, but I also think there are some aspects of this that I think are probably pretty common. And I think this one just caught folks' attention. And so from that standpoint, yeah, I'm going to read that. Let's see. I need to get over here, get my cursor here. Here we go. EPA demands Norfolk Southern handle all cleanup after the Ohio toxic train wreck and threatens consequences. This is the EPA. This is just the EPA saying, hey, what are you guys doing? So you're going to have a lot of that back and forth. Norfolk's going to try and get away with as little cleanup as possible and tell everybody it's all good, it's all fine. You know, after they just literally ran a train through their town and it just went wildly sideways. But don't worry, folks, it'll all be good. U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is ordering Norfolk Southern to handle and pay for all necessary cleanup after its train carrying toxic chemicals derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, more than 2 weeks ago. The EPA announced its legally binding order Tuesday, 18 days after a Norfolk Southern freight train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed. The disaster ignited a days-long fire, shot plumes of black smoke into the air, and led to an intentional release of vinyl chloride to help avert a more catastrophic blast. When I saw all the stuff, and I've been following this, when I saw all this stuff, I thought, wow, this is going to be a massive cleanup. And then it just really wasn't. And then we were told, it's all good. It's fine. It's good. Nothing to see here. That's when I kind of started paying attention. And most of it, there was a story that I kind of did a quick check on. It was a YouTube video this morning. And it was a guy saying that a lot of the storylines, if you typed in East Palestine, Ohio, environmental disaster, you'd get images coming up. But there was fact checked, and this was on Facebook. I personally didn't see any of that, but there's supposed to be, good sized storylines of that happening where the stuff is getting fact checked with, those little disclosures. And oftentimes that just immediately, it squashes the story, which is there could be other stuff going on, but we don't know. And it's so hard to know because you've got people saying, hey, this conspiracy aspect is coming. This is happening. Now you might not be able to see it because they're hiding it. And then you're like, okay, well then how can I prove that it's either happened or not happened? And if I can't prove it, and that's why I haven't covered this story to date, from a lot of what folks have been asking me, hey, check out this angle, check out this angle. So much of it, I can't prove, like the UFOs, right? Like the unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, we're supposed to call them now, because unidentified flying objects, that's an old school term. We don't want to use that. Flying saucers, we certainly don't want to. But, you get enough of these storylines and you start to think in your head, all right, what's the big picture here? What is going on? Yeah, and you guys are talking about, is this planned? Is this type of environmental disaster, is this planned? Is there a purpose for this? Is this happening on purpose? Is there a reason Biden's, off gallivanting around giving out hundreds of millions of dollars when, East Palestine, they might need a little bit of cleanup money, right? I mean, they might. 500 million might really help them out. Yeah. So As part of EPA's legally binding order, the agency said Norfolk Southern will be required to identify and clean up any contaminated soil and water resources. That seems reasonable, right? Reimburse the EPA for cleaning services to be offered to residents and businesses to provide an additional layer of reassurance, which will be conducted by EPA staff and contractors. Attend and participate in public meetings at the EPA's request and post information online. Pay for the EPA's costs for work performed under this order. Yeah, this is the railroad's problem. They should fix it. They should make the city whole. But it's like a lot of lawsuits. A lot of lawsuits that you see. There's one person that's probably more right than the other person, but it comes down to who has the deeper pockets and who can last the longest in court. And so the city's just going to get hosed. The city's just going to get hosed. You just know that's going to be true, right? The order will take effect Thursday. CNN has reached out to Norfolk Southern for comment. If the rail company fails to complete any actions ordered by EPA, the agency said it will immediately step in, conduct the necessary work, and then seek to compel Norfolk Southern to pay triple the cost. I don't particularly believe anything the EPA says either. Just don't. Any of these governmental entities, in what I do, in just basically, bringing storylines to you guys that I find to be reasonable or so unreasonable that I got to read them, just the craziness going on. And the more you dig into some of this stuff, I think there are underlying stories that are happening, but not necessarily the way that these, most of the conspiracy theories that are being thrown out there. I think that's pretty basic. It's kind of like follow the money. Power and money, right? That's what it all comes down to. The whole housing thing is based on that. So this, you got governmental oversight or lack thereof. You've got industry. You've got capitalism. How can we get our crap from point A to point B the fastest? All right, let's let her rip. Get there. Capitalism, you're going to cut some corners, people would argue, and sometimes those corners end up with a train derailing. Not saying that's the cause or, why this happened. Do we know why this happened? I mean, do we know what the actual, I guess I never really realized what caused the train to crash and burn? What was it? I don't think I ever worked that part out. And do they know, or is there an investigation going on? So the EPA said it will exercise its strongest authority against the train's operator under the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act. All these big long names, I just start to fall asleep immediately when I read them, right? Because you're just like, all right, you've given yourself this really long worded name and you expect me to think, oh, well, then you must be substantive. The announcement came shortly after EPA Administrator Michael Regan visited an East Palestine home and drank tap water with Governor Mike DeWine, trying to reinforce earlier assurances that the municipal water supply is safe. How do we know that tap water came from the tap? Do we know? Tell you what, till I worked out what was going on, if I lived in East Palestine, I would not be drinking the water. I don't know that I would want to be there. You know what I mean? I've been around enough environmental issues in the, what was it? Probably late 80s, early 90s. There was a bunch of appraisal work that I could have done where you had to put on a hazmat suit and go into a meth lab type owned home. And they were paying some pretty darn good money for that appraisal work. But you had to go in there with a hazmat suit. And I was kind of like, you know what? I don't think so. Do we even know that these hazmat suits are going to work for the kind of toxic chemicals you're asking me to walk into? Why don't we just tear the house down and you guys start over and call it good? Because I'm not wearing a hazmat suit in there. So to stay in a city, it's really going to impact this city, right? So how do you compensate? What reparations do we have for East Palestine? And then there's the whole, well, it's a bunch of working class white people, so nobody's going to care about them in East Palestine. That's a broad, I don't know the actual, that's one of the storylines that I've heard that I don't know the actual demographics, but Ohio. So that's one of the, the crazy storylines out there is, we're just crapping on East Palestine because of, there isn't this whole storyline that you can grab onto and say, hey, look, we don't have equity here. That's what's going on. On Tuesday, the state opened a new health clinic to address the growing reports of rashes, headaches, nausea, and other symptoms in East Palestine. So not only do we have drink the water, it's fine, the dirt is good, but hey, I've got a little bit of a rash back here, got a headache, nausea, kind of describing how I felt after cleaning my stove without a mask on. Yeah, it's terrible. I had to turn my fan up to high and just run that and open up the door. And, you got to do that a couple of times. And it's like, you know what? I'm just probably going to live with some dirt in my stove after this one. So the health clinic will have registered nurses, mental health specialists, and at times a toxicologist. All right. So are we admitting that there are issues going on because of this stuff is not only hit the atmosphere, but it's in the ground and it's seeping up through the groundwater? Mental health specialists and at times a toxicologist. All right, we're going to need a little sample from you. From you, human being. We need to find out if you're toxic. So it's just all this stuff that you're like, is this normal? What's normal for a massive, chemical breach like this? What's the normal protocol? Because all the information we're getting here, it doesn't add up to me. The story we're reading right now, which is the EPA is saying, hey, train company, you fix this stuff. That makes sense. Medical teams from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the U.S. Department of Health are expected to arrive in the community as early as this week. It's already been, a couple of weeks? Been 18 days? To help assess what dangers might remain. Despite isn't that like a day late, dollar short? It's like the chemical reaction after a nuclear bomb. All that activity happens right off the get-go, and then it diminishes over time. That whole, I don't want to say carbon half-life, but whatever that chemical process is. Despite the reports of health problems, authorities have repeatedly assured residents that the air and municipal water supply in the town are safe. I've got a story for you. Everything's safe. It's all good. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about that, pesky rash on your back. Crews have checked hundreds of homes and have not detected any dangerous levels of contaminants, the EPA said. I saw that. I saw them going around. I also watched, when crews were going around telling everybody, hey, we're going to need to evacuate you because we're going to do a big toxic burn off. It's going to be fine. But, we are going to really burn some chemicals and they're just, going to go up into the air. And I would recommend probably not breathing for a while if you stick around here. Just on the safe side, don't inhale. Just hold it for a while. You'll be good. The agency said air monitoring and sampling will continue until removal of heavy contaminated soil in the derailment area is complete and odors subside in the community. Still, life has been upended in East Palestine as residents question the findings and whether it's safe to drink the water or breathe the air. I would say those are very, very valid concerns. That's kind of my thought after all this and after reading all of this stuff is I don't really know what to believe, but I probably wouldn't be hanging out in East Palestine, period. But, if you don't have many options, your home is there, you're working a job, what are these residents supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? Go get a hotel in a, town over? I don't know that there are great solutions. And, when's it safe to go back? Yeah, the minute that rash goes away, I'd say it's fine. But, they're assuring the residents soil's fine and water's good to drink. It will be important to monitor people's health and the environment around the train derailment for some time to come, since health impacts may not emerge until later, said Dr. Aaron Haynes, an environmental health scientist at the University of Kentucky. We should never say we're done looking at this community for potential exposures and health impacts. So how long does that run? How long do you need to be, concerned about? How long will the impacts from this train wreck stay in the environment? And then you got the EPA saying, it's good. We're fine. We just did samples. Everything's good. Can you believe them? That's the hard one. And that's where if I was a resident of East Palestine, and if I had the means, I would say, you know what? This is a good time to take that 2-week vacation, but then eventually you got to go back. What's the timeline on all this? Those kinds of things. But I don't think we're getting the full story. Water intakes in other cities temporarily shut off amid contamination concerns. Okay. All right. Yeah. So they're kind of isolating themselves from East Palestine. Some waterways were contaminated after the crash, killing an estimated 3,500 fish. But officials have said they believe those contaminants have been contained. See, everything that, governmental entities are telling us is that it's all good. It's all fine. Norfolk Southern installed booms and dams to restrict the flow of contaminated water from Sulphur Run and Leslie Run, two streams where fish were found dead, the EPA said. The spill did flow to the Ohio River during that initial slug. That's comforting. But the Ohio River is very large, and it's a water body that's able to dilute the pollutants pretty quickly, Environmental Protection Agency official Tiffany Kavalek said last week. Didn't Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, didn't he talk about the Ohio River before he'd gone absolutely mad and Martin Sheen had to go in and just, end his command? Wasn't he talking about the Ohio River? I think he was. Kavalek said the agency is pretty confident that the low levels of contaminants that remain are not getting passed on to water customers. I am pretty confident you can drink the water. Go ahead. I've been working at home on getting my garden ready to plant. How many beds am I going to have? That kind of thing. And one of the big things is you can't really plant before that last frost has happened because the whole killing of the seed thing. So, in Ohio, do you go out and if you're close to this spill, do you go out, do you plant, your 2023 crop? Have you already done that? Are you going to do that? Do you reconsider that? I mean, when somebody says, we're pretty sure the contaminants are down to a low enough level, I don't know. Or do you just go buy some organic stuff from your local grocery store and say, I'm going to call this one good. No crops for me this year. A series of pumps have been placed upstream to reroute Sulphur Run. Sulphur Run. You want to talk about, all right, sulfur runs down this stream. We're going to call that Sulphur Run. I don't know if you've ever smelled sulfur in the open. Not a good smell. Rotten eggs, right? It's just kind of like, you smell it in the gas streams coming out of like a big mountain like Rainier towards the top. Like, what is that? Sounds like somebody did something awful. That smell is horrible. Smell that on the big mountains, right? It's the gases seeping up from the volcano. It smells like sulfur and it's just rotten eggs and terrible. And so you got placed upstream to reroute Sulphur Run around the derailment site, Norfolk Southern said Monday. Environmental teams are treating the impacted portions of Sulphur Run with booms, aeration, and carbon filtration units, Norfolk Southern added. Those teams are working with stream experts to collect soil and groundwater samples to develop a comprehensive plan to address any contamination that remains in the stream banks and sediment. That being said, do you feel better? I necessarily wouldn't. I'd be like, okay, yeah, but you got all this other physical evidence saying, hey, maybe not all is well in East. I keep wanting to say Philistine, but it's Palestine, right? Philistine. Was that biblical? I believe so. Yeah. The Philistines. Wasn't Goliath a Philistine? I believe, going back to my Bible history there. Water intakes from the Ohio River that were shut off Sunday as a precautionary measure were reopened after sampling found no detections of the specific chemicals from the train derailment. We're good here. Got some other stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that. The Greater Cincinnati Water Works in Northern Kentucky Water District said Monday. All right. Okay. So they're in the clear. Hasn't reached them, so far. A third utility provider, the Maysville Utility in Kentucky, announced that it temporarily shut off water intakes from the Ohio River on Saturday when the toxic chemicals released into the river from the derailment were expected to arrive at the water treatment intake in Kentucky. So they must, some engineers out there figured out water flow and, all right, it happened about then. Okay, we did it then. Going to release the water down into the river. So it should be getting here about, let's see. Yep. All right. Shut her down. Some engineers are out there and that was their job. Water measurements have been below the level of concern, Julian said, and Maysville took precautionary measures in temporarily shutting down their Ohio River intake due to the public concern. Well, maybe not just the public concern, maybe because it was a good idea. In cases like this, I'm willing to roll the dice on a lot of things. When you've got environmental hazards, maybe safety comes first. Maybe a little precaution goes a long way. And if you got to do some crazy stuff to make your city safe again, I'd say that's the direction to go in. But nobody wants to do that because the expense is too great, right? I mean, you all saw Aaron Brockovich and, how that went. So we're just going to take all this stuff and with, our cat, we're just going to put it into a hole and we're going to, put some topsoil on it. We're going to grow some flowers. It's all good. What you can't see, you don't know, right? The takeaway is that anyone along the Ohio River where the contaminants made their way can breathe a sigh of relief. I feel better. Don't you feel better? There's a little risk to our water supply from the trail derailment site, and temporarily shutting down the water treatment plant and not pulling from the river until the spill passed should give us all peace of mind. Okay. So here's one of the things. They are doing testing. And, if those tests come up and they're dirty and they don't report them, somebody finds out, that's a massive, massive issue, right? It's a massive issue. Not to say that hasn't happened before, but it's a massive issue. So I kind of struggle with, all right, we've had multiple tests done here. They're telling us it's good. And yet you've got all this other stuff where you're like, yeah, I don't know. Not being a specialist, I'm a real estate guy, but I do know how homes are impacted when you have any kind of a chemical. EPA on a gas station, you got to do a phase assessment, like a phase 2 assessment, and you got to go through and you got to make sure that site is clean. If you get a dirty assessment, you're going to have to clean it up, and that can be super expensive. So the impact of things leaching into the environment on real estate is horrific. It's horrific. And so that's why I think there is some real motivation behind, there's your glass of water. It's all good. Soil, fine too. Grow that crop of whatever it is you want to grow a crop of. Meanwhile, the majority of the hazardous rail cars remain at the crash site as investigators continue to probe the wreck. But about 15,000 pounds of contaminated soil and 1.1 million gallons of contaminated water have been removed from the scene, Norfolk Southern announced Monday. The contaminated soil became a point of contention last week after a public document sent to the EPA on February 10th did not list soil removal among completed cleanup activities. It is not yet known what significance or impact the soil that was not removed before the railroad reopened on February 8th will have had on the surrounding areas. They opened up this railroad so quick, just absolutely just crazy. Well, you guys have gone off on what, Beaufort, India, and then Van Halen at their peak. All right. I didn't get to see Van Halen until much, much later, and it was not good. So you guys are very suspicious. Unmarked huge chemical containers just dumped at the quarry right next to the Kitsap County Recycling Center in Silverdale. All these stories out there, right? The train tracks there go to Bangor Submarine Base, okay? I mean, there's a lot of environmental stuff out there. It's amazing how silent Pennsylvania is on the Ohio train disaster fumes. Fumes are in Pennsylvania. Yeah, J.D. Vance from Ohio, he was making some statements. He was making some statements about, it basically just left Ohio to fend for itself because nobody really cares about Ohio. And it's like, okay, they opened this trail line up super quick and no dirt removed. All right, now we're going to go back and make them remove the dirt. We're going to make them certify that it's all good. And tell us your assessment of Ohio Palestine real estate market. All right. So you know what my initial thought is on that? If you have to sell within the next 6 months or a year, you are hosed. That would be my professional assessment. Bend over and take it, because that's what you're going to do. After a while, people's memories start to forget. But if you're right around this area, that is going to have a much greater impact than if you're in the general community at all. And a lot of it will have to do with if the spread happens to greater areas than a limited area. So if it's limited to the toxicity is limited to a certain area, those areas are going to be royally hosed for who knows how long. You've seen when, the EPA comes in and condemns stuff because it's just not safe to live there. Hosed, get demolished. You're going to have the government basically pay, whoever's going to pay for basically, buying homes in that zone. So you've got that happens in the immediate area. The town in general will have a negative connotation for as long as people's memories are like, now what happened in East Palestine? Oh yeah, chemical wreck. Is the house anywhere close to that train wreck, chemical burn off? Is the house anywhere close to that? Or is it, is it okay? So you're going to have a hit to the market, right? I don't know the actual dynamics of the Ohio real estate market other than, Cincinnati, you got some problems. There's some issues. You've got a lot of, you've got industry that hasn't gone the right direction in Ohio. And so from that standpoint, you've got some really depressed areas. And I am guessing that East Palestine is, along those lines. I don't really know, but say East Palestine's just like an average Midwest town, whatever. And you have this happen. Yeah. I mean, if you got a home listed there, unless somebody has already committed to a job and they are just fearless with their assessment of environmental disaster, they may not consummate that sale, right? This would be a very good reason to get out of, you got a house under contract. Hey, I want my earnest money back. I'm going to take that earnest money back. We don't know what the impact is of this. That would be a very valid reason. Maybe your contract doesn't state that, but what judge is basically going to say, or what board, what MLS board that argues, commissions and all that, and who gets their earnest money back? Who's going to say, yeah, I mean, you just need to suck it up. That whole trail derailment thing, I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, they told you the water is good. So you breached your contract, you got to pay. You're not going to see a lot of that. Whenever this kind of stuff happens, it always happens. And the transactions that are in the middle of it, those croak, those die. And then, stuff that's sitting on the market tends to sit and sit and sit. Maybe you got to drop that price to, you get some ridiculous price points. But after a while, you know what happens? Kind of goes back to business as usual. You'll have, I don't know, will you have a 25% drop in the marketplace there? I'm totally throwing out numbers because we don't know what the long-term impact is going to be from a lot of this stuff, right? So until you can kind of quantify that, say you're way the F across town, not in an area that was impacted by this, but then you've got a water, contamination issue in the area. Okay. So even though I'm way far away, this is going to impact my home because I'm in this community. And you're always going to have the stigma of East Palestine on your address. You can't get away from that, right? Because people in the near future are going to know, oh yeah, okay, all right, yeah. So if you have to sell a home, just like the Great Recession, you're going to bring that price down to get it to the cheapest price point because that's what people are going to pay. And then everybody else chases that number down. And, who knows what the bottom line will be. There will be some equilibrium point at which the prices kind of level out. And that's when people are like, you know what? Haven't had any wild environmental, train wrecks literally recently. And then people kind of start to forget and they're like, oh yeah, well, it just happened a long time ago. Everything seems to be fine. They are doing sampling of the water and it does look like that it's okay. And then business kind of goes back to usual. And then it becomes a punchline like other stories that you guys are talking about where you say, I remember that one. Well, people live in those areas, right? And real estate gets sold in those areas all day long. So short term, yeah, it's going to have a massive impact would be my guess. Because would you want to buy a home there? Even if you're a speculator, would you want to buy a home there? Yeah, let's just really roll the dice. No, you're probably going to take some other bet in some other town where this kind of thing didn't happen, where you don't know what the eventual result's going to be. So a lot of it really depends on the magnitude of the drop Do home prices drop 50%? Offhand, I would say that's high. I would say 35% would be your top drop, and they may only drop 15%. You get enough of the, sampling, and everything kind of goes back to business as pretty quickly. Everything gets, the rubber stamp, people's rashes go away. Then you're going to have a situation where life moves on. And that is what happens oftentimes. Now, the exceptions to that are like Chernobyl, right? I mean, the radioactive sites that we created, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All right. You've got some long-term impacts on housing there because you basically had to scratch, start over. And by that, I mean, basically just leave that alone because of the toxicity. Not saying that'll happen here in East Palestine, but you're going to have some impact, and you're going to have buyers walk away from contracts, and you're going to have real estate agents have a tough time. But then there's also people still got to sell their homes. Maybe people are relocating. Maybe people are moving in, but maybe people move into the town next door and they commute in for a while. Whatever it might be until they figure out, okay, things are looking good here. Man, check out the cheap prices here in East Palestine. I know they had that thing like 5 years ago. Everything looks pretty good to me. And look at what a cute house I can get for 125 grand. That's going to start to be where the wheels start to go back the other direction. Market starts to crank up, and then it'll kind of go back to where it was. Invariably, that's what happens, unless you've got like a Chernobyl. And then you're like, yeah, that's not good. All right. So I think we basically killed this article, didn't we? Yeah. Oh, here we go. So some East Palestine businesses struggle. Imagine that. This goes hand in hand with what you guys are asking about. Oceanfront property in New Chernobyl. Yeah. So this is the boots on the ground roofer. You know what? I don't think we're going to be putting on a lot of roofs this summer in Ohio, right? As skepticism spreads about the safety of the air and water, some local businesses say they've seen fewer customers. Not shocking, right? Not shocking. Everybody's afraid. They don't want to come in and drink the water. Teresa Sproul is a restaurant owner in East Palestine, told CNN affiliate. Can you blame them? I mean, I'm a thrill seeker. I'll do crazy stuff just because, but you know what? Drinking the water? Probably not. Put a lot of chemicals in my body over the years. I mean, nicotine. Who doesn't love a good nicotine rush? Don't do that anymore. Caffeine, all kinds of food. I mean, booze, chemicals. But if somebody said, hey, here's a fresh glass of water, this is going to be good. A stylist at a hair salon told WOIO that there's no doubt the salon lost business and that customers may be worried about what may be in the water washing their hair. I know a lot of our businesses are already suffering greatly because people don't want to come here. Local greenhouse owner. Yeah, it's only going to be locals for a while. And the locals are going to consider, you got a greenhouse owner. All right. So they water the plants, they're growing stuff. You got air, that whole oxygen, sun, water thing with plants. Do you really want to be eating food? And I'm kind of taking it next level. But I think a lot of people are going to, if they have the option, they're going to say, yeah, no, I don't think so. Next town over, whatever. Next big town, we're going to go there. We're going to, spend our money there because we just don't trust what we're being told. And that is what corresponds to the real estate market just tanking in the short term. Her husband, Donald Elzer, echoed her concerns, saying it's devastating. The longer it goes on, the worse it gets. And it's going to. It's going to, until you get to that point where you haven't heard any new terrible stories. And then you need a few years after that. And then, a bunch of samples for years. But, by then, you've got a community that's, the property value's dropped, right? 25, 35% total guess there. Diana Elzer also worried about her longer-term economic impacts to the community. Our property values. Who is going to want to buy a house here now? This is a resident and a business owner, right? Who is going to want to buy a house here now? Speculators, investors who know how this goes. And you know what? They're going to require a discount. They're going to have a discount because they might be paying cash. They might be, whatever. And it's not a bad play. It's not a bad play. And it'll work out for some investors really well. But you got to have some balls to go out and do that right now. All right, we're only, almost 3 weeks in. Let's go buy that house now. You don't have a lot of that going on, right? Just because you've got so much uncertainty. No market, real estate especially, likes uncertainty. Our property value, who's going to want to buy a house? It's going to be a long struggle to go back to where we were. And where was East Palestine, Ohio? Where were they economically? Again, I go on a limb and say, probably not absolutely killing it without knowing, U.S. Transportation Chief will visit Ohio, but not now. Not now. Pete Buttigieg is not going to be there anytime soon. He's going to get to it, when air quality is safer and the water is clean. It's mostly safe, but, Pete doesn't want to go there. What does Pete do? I can't work that out. What does he do? I knew he took a lot of dad time off when his kid was born, whatever. And I was kind of like, I hear about fathers taking time off and it's like, hey, if you can swing that, if you can make that happen. But when my kids were born, I was like, oh, geez, I got another mouth to feed. I better start really working my ass off here. And that's kind of what I did. That whole bonding thing with your kids. Yeah. Raise them right. They'll be around for a long time. Plenty of time to bond with them. Let them bond with mom. You need to cover the bills. That's kind of my philosophy. Come home, visit them at night, hang on to them and do that whole thing. And maybe you take the 4 a.m. feeding shift. Oh, that was a tough one, right? But Pete, what was he doing? Well, he's not visiting East Palestine. When the time is right, but he's not going to announce a date. When the time is right, I will go there. It's like, okay, Pete, you mad dog, you. All right, so let's read this one. This is a good one. I'll see what you guys are saying here. Northern Southern to Norfolk Southern, I think it is, yeah. Australian woman. Welcome, Australian woman. I am a half Australian male. Ought to purchase every home for $1 million to compensate them. Yeah, that's, where is Al Jazeera to cover the East Palestine story? Pete swallows a lot. Oh, Skytroop, you said that out loud. Okay. That is so funny. Yep. Can't disagree with that. So yeah, compensation for housing in these, it just becomes a massive mess, right? And that's a lot of what governmental entities do with the appraisal industry. We need you to appraise this property low so that when we buy it from said residents, because we got to take it for that freeway that we're doing, a little bit of eminent domain. We're going to take this property for you, but we're going to compensate you. Yeah, the owners never get compensated, fairly, because it's so hard to figure out. All right, you had a house and it was normal location, and then we're going to run a freeway through it, so you got to go. This is for the better common man. But a deal like this, where you've got a, chemical outbreak, it's kind of like, all right, how do you compensate people? You need to compensate people. If people are being impacted, they're being impacted right now, today. These businesses are being impacted right now, today. And yet what reparations are going to have? Yeah, zero, right? You're going to have zero for Ohio. East Palestine Mayor Biden Ukraine visit is the biggest slap in the face. That's what Mayor of East Palestine is saying. He's like, hey, got this literally in his backyard. Mayor of East Palestine, Ohio on Monday said that President Biden's visit to Ukraine was the biggest slap in the face as his town continues to deal with the chemical fallout from a train derailment. During an appearance on Fox News, East Palestine Mayor Trent Conaway was asked to give his thoughts on Biden's surprise visit to Kiev on Monday while he is in Poland for an international trip. That was the biggest slap in the face. What tells you right now? He doesn't care about us, Conaway told host Jesse Waters. So he could send every agency he wants to. But I found out this morning in one of the briefings that he was in Ukraine giving millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Away to people over there, not to us. And I'm furious. Yeah, President's Day in our country. He's over in Ukraine, he added. So that tells you what kind of guy he is. Mayor of Ohio, not pleased with our fearless leader of the free world decision. Now, you might say, okay, well, he should probably go there, and he should, but he had this planned ahead of time, so he had to go. I think a president should go and see something like this. You know, when Trump, uh, he said he was going to go to here, and then immediately Biden said, "No, we got to send some folks, from our crew there." So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, all right, yeah, crazy stuff going right. Does anybody else find it interesting that Chernobyl happened in Ukraine and then Ohio happened as Biden goes to Ukraine? I did think about that, and it made me think, USA out of Ukraine. Absolutely. I believe that as well. What are we doing there? What are we doing there? Just propping up another country that's eventually going to fall, right? Obama was too busy to visit Washington, Illinois. Going back to Obama, talking about Obama. The Ohio train derailment created a perfect TikTok storm. You guys don't care about TikTok. I could care about less about TikTok. I care about TikTok from the standpoint of we've got some content on there, and that means we've got a TikTok channel, and all the stuff that I'm seeing might not be the most security perfect platform out there. And if you look at what the terms of service on TikTok are, they can basically just go up your backside, and it's all in the terms of service. They'll be like, yep, no, we said that we could do whatever we wanted, and here we are. Smile. You read through those terms of service on TikTok. So it's a lot of people are getting their news from TikTok, though. And that's where the crazy train goes, is because you've got so many people, especially under 30, doing the whole TikTok. I got TikTok famous. They're just shaking their ass on the TikTok, and some people fit that bill, and they do really well. They do really well. So you can't blame them. But news on TikTok, the social media platform, helped push the story into the mainstream while also fueling misinformation and conspiracy theories. You know what drives me crazy is when you do a post and you put out a video, you do a really good piece of content, and then you get one of these labels that say may contain misinformation. I'm like, since when do we label things because people are too stupid to figure out misinformation in their own head? We're just going to tell everybody, all right, this is probably misinformation. Oh, wait, the laptop was real? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. 2 years later, New York Times reports on it. Looks like it was a real laptop. Hunter Biden had his candies on his wiener. When a train carrying toxic chemicals derailed in a small town in eastern Ohio on February 3rd, reports soon appeared in national news outlets. They showed how a fire followed the wreck with ominous dark smoke clouds. You remember seeing that? And you're like, oh, geez, that's not good. Going back to the real estate thing, all the buyers saw that and went, God, that's not good. Yeah, I think I'm going to bail on that transaction. Smoke clouds billowing over the town of East Palestine. Officials evacuated the region and began what they called a controlled release of chemicals from the train cars. But the disaster in a town of fewer than 5,000 people didn't dominate mainstream news coverage. That was one of the things that I was looking at so closely, was that it didn't get the coverage I thought it would. It was just like, nothing to see here. Ecological disaster. But, it's just railroad, train, chemicals. We're just going to, dig a ditch and we're going to burn off some of this stuff. It was almost like business as usual, right? We move a lot of stuff around the country, so not that big of a deal. That changed after Nick Dromboski, an engineer and entrepreneur who has made a hobby of studying industrial accidents. That sounds like a fun guy on a Saturday night, right? Made a hobby of studying industrial accidents, gave a science lesson on TikTok. His video breaking down the chemicals found at the scene has been viewed millions of times, and people have posted countless other videos about the derailment to the platform. If I didn't come out and say something, I think that this could have just been swept under Dromboski, who has a personal connection to someone affected by the disaster in East Palestine, who alerted him to the derailment. The nature of TikTok is so unique that me, essentially on paper, just a guy in my home office reading what's going on, I was able to reach out to millions of people, and he put his stuff out there. But that is also, so is this guy an expert? No, but this is his hobby. So that's some of the troubles, right? Is that the kids that are on TikTok, they don't understand that you've got to be willing to trust those reporting the news. And if you don't know that storyline, it could be just complete BS. So, and that's where TikTok is like, oh, that's a story. So, they just automatically believe it. This guy's information, I have no reason. I mean, it was vetted on Joe Rogan, so it has to be correct, right? I mean, he would never run with the story that wasn't true. TikTok is increasingly becoming a go-to news source. 10% of all adults say they get news from the app regularly. Here's how much news I get from TikTok. 0. Yep. That figure jumps to 26% for adults under 30. Meanwhile, local news outlets have been financially decimated, creating coverage gaps. Well, have you guys followed the Don Lemon saga? That guy, how does that guy still have a job? He's off in South Beach with his husband, boyfriend, whatever. Doesn't show up to work on, what was it, Monday? After making some pretty interesting comments about women are not in their prime after their 20s and 30s. He gave them maybe in their 40s, and he was talking about the former governor from South Carolina, running for president. And he was like, yeah, she's not in her prime. She's 51. And the other two women on the CNN morning show are like, wait a minute, what? What do you do? Prime for what? And Don Lemon is like, yeah, per Google, women aren't in their prime past their 30s anyway. And it's like, did you just say that out loud? Because you're going to have some people gunning for you. And so Don's got a little issue, and he is supposed to be back at work, I think, tomorrow. That'll be interesting to see how that goes, because that guy gets a hall pass because he's, But the train derailment disaster has particularly resonated on social media. It comes as people are seeing lots of weird news about UFOs and spy balloons, potentially shaking confidence in the government even further. The circumstances of the derailment are particularly strange, and they uncannily mirror, all right, here we go. We're matching up. You guys talked about it, white noise. So white noise, a sci-fi, I have seen that in comments, maybe not on this stream, but white noise is one of those. It's a sci-fi movie released last year that follows a family living in the aftermath of a dangerous chemical leak in the Ohio. After the wreck, there was a dearth of easily digestible, detailed information, all that propels a story on apps like TikTok. It feels like, because TikTok is just these super short, little tiny clips. You can go up to a minute long. We put some content on there, and it actually does pretty well because people are like, hey, who's this guy? He's talking more than 2 seconds, and it sounds like you can put more than one sentence in front of another and make a whole paragraph. He actually makes a statement. So, we've done okay on TikTok. It's just I don't really trust that platform, knowing the terms of service are, all right, yeah, I'm going to know everything about you, everything. It feels like an inflection point for this new news media ecosphere, said Paul Mazzucco, a resident fellow in mass media studies with the K2 Institute, a libertarian think tank. This has always been happening. TikTok creators commenting on local news stories. What's interesting is we've got a feedback loop. The lack of reporting is commented on by TikTok creators, which then has led to more reporting by traditional media outlets. Through TikTok, people have been able to call for more information about the derailment, potentially leading more major publications to devote more coverage than they would have. So in this case, the people going down the TikTok road are actually elevating the interest in the story. That to me is very interesting. Now, if this were happening on a platform that I trusted a little bit more, I would feel better about that. But right now, I trust very few platforms. I trust Rumble a little bit. I don't trust anybody. But the other major platforms, I mean, you might even go as far as saying, oh, Twitter's pretty safe. Twitter's got its own issues. They're working through some stuff. I had a tweet the other day that was censored, and it was just based on a storyline that must have ticked some, box about something in the title of whatever video it was we were releasing. But I looked at that and went, good, Twitter. Yeah, getting censored there as well. I mean, why not? Let's just go for the trifecta of, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Just, censor me. All right. So I think I'm pretty much done on the whole train wreck. I trust what my lying eyes tell me to believe. Yeah, all right. Lying eyes, yeah. You guys are talking about lots of stuff there. Yeah. All right. I'm going to finish off with the Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe is forced out at right wing group. Yeah, the board just bounced him. The board just bounced him, right? So we're kind of keeping in theme here with the whole Ohio deal with, are there conspiracy theories going on? You're going to have a bunch of conspiracy theories on James O'Keefe because he was basically, I don't follow Project Veritas that heavily, but I've seen some of their work and it's pretty interesting. They get the results they do because they kind of do some of that they do some undercover stuff that you're like, all right, I probably wouldn't have done it that way, but the end results are, well, I'll take them. That makes sense to me. Sometimes you look at these end results that Project Veritas comes up with and you're like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that is a little outside of what we've been told. But, there it is. So the deal there is the board forced him out. He may have spent some money on some limos and some stuff, and I think they were waiting to push him out. They also said that he had some issues with the way he taught he interacted with people underneath him. People are getting bitched out and they're getting canceled for basically just holding others accountable and not doing it with a big, huge smile on their face and trying to blow sunshine up somebody's back end. You know what I mean? I saw a news story the other day and they said that the firings at, was it Verizon or Amazon? The firings at Amazon were a sombering experience. And it's like, well, what do you want them to be? People are being fired. People are going to get their feelings hurt. People who work under others are going to get their feelings hurt. It's just going to happen. And some guys are going to hurt more feelings than others. Yeah, that sucks. Now, you kind of know what kind of boss you work for, right? And hopefully you work for a guy that's reasonable. Maybe he blows his top every now and then like we all do. And it's going to flow downhill, right? And that's probably what happened. I'm not trying to make excuses for James O'Keefe. It sounds like he might have had some issues with a little bit of accounting, but who knows? They brought in, $21 million in 2021 or 2022. They got a big budget. If he wants to get some limos and do whatever, it's kind of his call. But if the board has him on that on top of, we got a bunch of complaints from underlings. They didn't really want to work and you were yelling at them to work, but still we got complaints. Is there some of that in this? Probably, because there's always two sides of the story, right? So that's kind of my whole point here. You've always got two sides of the story to the Ohio thing. You got two sides of the story to the James O'Keefe thing, and you just need to keep following those stories and, see which way the money goes, because that's what this is all about, right? Power and money. That's what it all comes down to. Follow the gravy train, and that's what you got going on. So maybe James O'Keefe, they're going to, force him out. He's going to go off and do something else. Project Veritas, they're big enough and they're strong enough. They'd probably just bring in whoever their next in line is. And yeah, he didn't found the thing, but they'll keep going. They're pretty well funded. So, but James, he'll be out doing something else. He'll get another, Twitter account up and running and off he goes, off to the races. Okay. Hey, you guys, don't forget to enter into that, the giveaway. We're doing 3 subscriptions to the reasonable paid subscription site. On the paid subscription site, we got a bunch of stuff going on there. So you want to check that out. We've got a Twitter feed where we've got a bunch of people that kind of feed the storylines that I do. You can go in there and their Twitter feed is just right there. All of the podcasts that I do are on our Discord channel. And on our Discord channel, we've got a channel called Rock On. And I just post videos and content about rock and roll. And I just posted a trailer for Cocaine Bear. That's a movie you're gonna want to see about a bear who got into some cocaine and then terrorized a small town. I mean, who doesn't want to see that? Because, we got stories all day long that are kind of depressing, but Cocaine Bear, that's some good stuff. Plus rock and roll, you can't go wrong with that, right? So if you enjoy kind of stuff along those lines, check out the Discord channel. Discord channel is totally free. You go to a section in there and there'll be a giveaway. You click a little button, you'll be entered into our giveaway. We're going to give out 3 subscriptions to our private website where we've got on the content, the members only content. I want to say we have like 50 videos up there now, stuff that you haven't seen on YouTube because it's content that for one reason or another, we can't put up there because we're getting demonetized and we're getting censored on so much of this stuff. Literally just talking about what's going on out there. It's like, no advertisers for that. Yeah, no, not so much. Oh, that storyline? No, not, oh, that? Oh, no. That's a hard no. So we're putting a lot up elsewhere where there are less restrictions, and that's the private content. And so by subscribing to that content, you guys are paying for that because, yeah, that's the way we're, that direction is going. Still going to put up as much content as we can on, where you're watching this right now. And we'll continue to do that because it's a massive platform. But you got to kind of figure out which direction we're going. So if you want to see some of the things we're doing, go check out the Discord channel. Don't be frightened about it. I know there's a lot of stuff. It's just basically a messaging channel. Think of it as an expanded version of what you do with your friends late at night on Facebook. When you're just like, here's a good one. Boop. And you send it to your buddy on Facebook. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thank you so much. I'm going to check in and see how many platforms you can get tossed of, Sean. You know what? That's probably not a bad call. Sean, you doing vids from the Antifa Horn Crew Band from Portland 2020? Billy Squire, Stroke Me. I put that up this morning. Hello, it's me. Yeah, that is about the music industry, and it took me a long time to figure that one out. When you hear the song Stroke Me now, you can apply it right now to today to YouTube as well. So we've just got good stuff going on. So thank you so much. Love to have you subscribe if you haven't already and you're watching this, and we'll go from there. I'll see you on the next one. Probably won't do another live this week, but on the Discord channel, there's something called Watch Together. I don't know. We might watch some Ted Nugent videos. I'll let you know. But check out Discord if you're interested in any of this stuff at all. And thank you so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, let's see if I can turn this off all on my own. Stop streaming.